What's going on, everybody? Welcome back for another round of Questioning Constructs. We are your hosts. I'm John.
And I'm Rebecca. Welcome back.
Welcome back. We're here for another week. It's been a while. We took a little time off just because life has been a little hectic, I think, for the both of
Yeah,
us.
life was life
So
and fast
Yeah,
and hard.
life has actively been lifing. So we haven't been on for a little bit, but we haven't forgotten about you guys either. Definitely have been looking to get another episode out. So really happy to be here today. Um, that said, Rebecca's got something for us, and let's jump into things.
Yeah, so I figured we can do our topic and then to celebrate us being back and also the fact of us getting back into it, we're going to do some games kind of like halfway through. But my question for you, John, what is the best and the worst story that you are telling yourself right now? So a lot of times our stories are revolving or they're the conscious indicator to our belief systems. And I don't think we ask ourselves what stories we are telling ourselves. We just let our thoughts go on and repeat those stories. So, curious, what would you say if someone asked you, what is your best and worst story you're telling yourself right now about you?
That is an interesting question. It's interesting for a number of reasons because there's definitely different ways you can kind of view it or spin this question. But I think fundamentally we kind of all ask ourselves some type of version of this from time to time. Well, hopefully we all do, right? When we get those opportunities to check in, the thing about it may be that we don't necessarily know we're asking this question, right? But this question to me sounds a lot like, what are the harshest things you're telling yourself right now, and what are the what are the things you're focused on right now? I feel like those are
Mm,
very kind of like similar in a sense when people are just kind of dissecting their own lives. And for me, the answers to each of those questions are very similar. Um, so for me, probably the harshest thing that I am telling myself right now, or the worst story that I'm telling myself right now, is that I don't have enough time.
mm,
Um, and there's an interesting thing at play with myself right now because once I think you learn the value of time, you can't help but see it seeing it slip everywhere you look, and it's unfortunate, but that revelation that your time is valuable, and it's not just valuable in the world. While that's true, it's valuable to yourself.
mm-hmm,
Once you start kind of entangling that concept of value and time together in that way, it's easy to look around and see like how much time you actually spend doing things that don't necessarily push you in the direction of what you're trying to get to. Um, but then there's this funny thing that I think I'm experiencing where I'm overcorrecting for that um, for that visual, so to speak, and I'm pushing myself in a lot of different ways, and like it always feels like, man, I don't have time to get to this, or I don't have time for family, or I don't have time for XYZ, playing games, my relaxing,
mm-hmm.
and that's not necessarily true either. And so trying to find that balance is that's what I'm working on. But that's probably the worst thing story I'm telling myself, is that I don't have enough time. The best story that I'm telling myself, um, it's it's tough because telling ourselves good stories about ourselves is
Mm-hmm.
just in and of itself a skill that we're not all born with. But for me, uh, of the stories that I'm telling myself that I'm like, I really like, it's probably going to be uh, the you are focused. We're going to
Hmm.
do this. The I'm trying to build myself into this unshakable character. I really, for whatever reason, it's like the unshakable is the word that keeps being repeated when I have these conversations or have these discussions, or I'm pondering my own thoughts, wandering the my own back brain, so to speak. Um, I really want unshakable belief in myself, and I want unshakable willpower. And so I'm working towards that. And amongst working towards that, I'm often telling myself to do the thing that I notice. And I'm often telling myself that I can do what it is that I want to do.
How are you cheating yourself of time or overcorrecting for time?
Sure, I don't know that I'm necessarily cheating myself for time. I guess I might be actually. I feel like um, our phones are a very easy way to cheat ourselves on time.
Yeah.
So actually, there is value to that word specifically. Cheat specifically fits for phones because I think it cheats us out of our time,
Mhm.
100%. And so my story probably looks similar to a lot of other people's, which is doom scrolling.
Mhm.
I find myself sometimes for hours if I'm really having a rough day where I'm just scrolling. And it's an easy distraction mechanism that keeps me from like actually getting up and doing something that's useful. Um, Although lately I've been kind of cutting down on that a lot, actually. And I've been that whole concept of like do 1% and you'll be 365%
Yep.
better if you do 1% each day.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to hold to like the idea of I don't need to do everything. I just need to do 1% better than I did yesterday, or have 1% more of the plan done, or 1% more thought put into XYZ. As far as I forget what the word I used was. As far as kind of like overusing that concept of um, I don't have enough time, I think it probably comes up most with if I'm gonna do like a self analysis, probably family. Like
Mm.
right now, that's probably the biggest thing. And it doesn't help that I'm frustrated with my family. I think it's very easy to like want to distance yourself, especially in periods where there is frustration.
Mhm.
And so right now that's probably where I'm overcorrecting. That was the word, overcorrecting. I'm overcorrecting in the time I spend on family. Um,
Meaning
and I
spending
should,
less time with them?
yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm spending less time and actively seeking them out less. And realistically, again, third person analysis. So I'm not saying I'm going to do this. I'm not saying that I'm smart enough to take my own advice. I'm saying that if I was smart enough to take my advice would be, hey, slow down a little bit, give everybody some grace,
Mhm.
reach out to them, just check in like you normally do.
Mhm.
But I'm stubborn.
Okay. So I was using like cheat for with time because I found for myself relating to telling myself I don't have enough time. I think for me, I usually say I feel like I don't have enough time more than I'm telling myself I don't have enough time. But I seem to do a lot of like planning and then planning again and like how do I utilize my time? Okay, now I'm behind. How am I going to reuse my time? And so it's all this, I kind of call it cheating on time because you're still taking time away from yourself. The concept of that, you kind of do have all the time that you need. Um, and if you didn't hold yourself to such strict time horizons, what would that look like? Right? How could you accomplish more by being more fluid with going back and forth between whatever is most important to you in the moment, that 1% for the day? Um, and even that, at least I found myself, because I am interested in so many different things. When I do the 1% a day, it's almost like, so at a certain point I lose track of my goals because I'm flipping between so many different 1%. But I do think it's interesting, because I think you and I are heading to the same places. And for the stories, kind of going on to the stories that we tell ourselves that are good, and yours was want to be unshakable. I want to like my character, I want it to be so strong that, that's what I take with me through life. And can kind of go through anything. And I think you'll find this interesting. So I know that you told me you kind of wrote like a personal manifesto of sorts. And so I did something similar inadvertently. And so I think I find it interesting, and I want to hear your perspective on this when it comes to establishing your unbreakable character, what truly makes you you, what will not be wavered after a certain point in life. Because I know we've talked about there's something that happens in your 30s, like your 20s, is you're still uncovering your identity or uncoupling things that aren't you. And then your 30s, you kind of just go, screw that. I know who I am. And, I'm going to take this person forward. And I feel like that just gets probably more and more established as you go on through life, or at least I've heard from people who are, in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And so I found it interesting because when I did 28 goals, I just wrote down the goals that were most important to me right now. And then I started detecting themes and patterns. And I'm like, okay, what areas of life are most important to me then? And I narrowed it down to 5. And it's interesting every time I've done this exercise because in my 20s, I had so many more. But I think I've really gotten clear as to who I am or what's important to me as a person. And so that it fell into the themes of connection, energy creation, embodying, like kind of what you're talking about that character, building, health, wealth, and freedom. And those are my top, if you had to say like what my value sets or areas or life themes would be, all of my goals related to those. And so it was nice to see that clarity in understanding, like, if I had to explain myself in a value set of like, who is Becca and like, what is the unbreakable qualities in her, I can look at all those themes and see how they've played out through my entire life. And that's nice because even if you don't tell yourself good stories, and even if you don't tell yourself a lot of good stories, and even if your good stories aren't strong enough, because we have a habit of telling ourselves more bad stories than good, I think you can see the effect that when you've told yourself good stories, what that has led to. And it's usually somewhere consistent. And I think that gets more clear the further in life you go.
I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. I think a lot of that is spot on. I feel, the years that go by, we're kind of like the coal that gets pressed into the diamond, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, as they stack up, um, the, our front faces become clearer and
Mm-hmm.
clearer and clearer. And that's kind of, we're just at a point in our lives where we can see some of the clarity. We've been through enough that we can see where we came from.
Yeah.
And we've been through enough to know that it's important to know where you're going. And so being in that in between space of not being at the beginning, not being at the end, and still a little before the middle, we have, a lot of time ahead of us. And being able to understand that, for me, when I did my manifesto, and I'm still working on it, But the very clear thing that is present in it is my feelings about time. Time is so precious, and we have so little of it. Um, and it's it's tough because, of course, I don't want that to kind of be my waking moments, and it's not. It's far from it. The only time that I'm really considering time in this kind of form factor is when I have these extended conversations. But when you take the outside view of how much time we have on this planet, and when I start to think of how many generations of human beings existed before me, our time is so small. We have such a tight opportunity to make our impact. And this is why, for me, time has just shown itself to be insanely valuable. Um, and so, as I go through and as I kind of clear up, the phases, and I kind of see where I want to go, one thing is for sure: whatever direction that I'm moving in, I want it to be a direction that allows me the opportunity to use this valuable resource the way I deem appropriate. I think that's ultra important, and I think you also have a very strong importance
Mhm.
placed on that
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah, and I think I'm practicing right now. So let's talk about time for a second. So I listed out like what are my most important goals, right? Not putting a time horizon on it, just like what is most important to me. And my goals have been pretty consistent for the last, I would say, like 5 years. And they just kind of get more clear, or within that same theme, there's mini goals. And then, of course, from those goals, I picked out those key areas, right? Which was really important because now anything that comes to my life, I can evaluate it against what I know is my value set and go, is this really meeting one of those value sets? Because a goal that is not aligned with your value set, you can complete it, you might feel good, but it's the difference between everlasting fulfillment and just kind of going, well, I checked that box and now I don't really feel good about it. And people a lot of people don't link the two, and I think that's really important. And so going back to time, for example, for a minute, once I had the areas, I went, okay, so if that's what I value, if I could do anything I wanted in my day, what would that look like? And it was actually surprisingly pretty similar to what I'm already doing. A lot of nature walks, working on, projects or my business, financial stuff, financial freedom, and, connection, community. And then I said, okay, so I think one of the things I had put down was I wanted to work like 4 hours a day. So most of my day being like nature and connection with people, like the things that your life experiences, the things that truly matter at the end of the day, because we have so little time and time is precious. And I realized in that moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, even trying to fit everything in, even if every single day was like that and I didn't have a 9 to 5 or anything that didn't align with my value sets, it'd be really hard to accomplish everything right now. And then when I took it a step further and I was like, okay, well, that was if I didn't have to realistically do anything in my day, what would I do? What is realistic now? And so the schedule was pretty similar, but again, came to the same conclusion of, wow, I have a lot of big goals and not a lot of time realistically to dedicate to them. And even if you said, okay, well, you can cut out the walks, cut out connection with others, I've learned, and this was probably the most important thing with identifying your value sets, is when you are low in a value set. Like I would say the one I'm struggling with recently is connection. It affects everything else. So it's almost like you have to figure out your proper balance to keep yourself sustained, healthy, and going. But even if I took out all of those realistically with a 9 to 5, when you account for just general care for yourself, like showering, eating,
Cooking, yeah.
cooking,
Yeah.
doing all of your chores or like grocery shop, like all of that stuff that is such a time sink already. I'm like, wow, I have
There's
I'm
there's not a lot of
basically there's
space.
not a lot
Yeah.
of space, and I still
Yeah.
only have 4 hours approximately if I really wanted to dedicate to, all the stuff I need to do. So it was a huge wake up moment for me because for a long time I've felt overwhelmed and I always try and shrink things down. And I just really realized today, oh, you really only have like 4 hours. Like, start getting more strategic, give yourself that time back and do those long time horizons because, you're doing the best that you can, but you can't, at this point in your life, I'm realizing how important it is to not give up any of your value sets because of I've seen how much of a struggle it is to keep up with those things that we deem it like um I guess my business would fall under like building and wealth, right? Or any of the financial stuff. Well, you can't keep those going indefinitely if you're not doing the other value sets, whatever that is for you. So for me, connection and like energy creation, right? Like fun stuff.
So I'm curious. Let's do a rewind really quickly. There were some really cool things that were said there that I personally find cool.
Mm-hmm.
And especially me being able to relate to you
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like feelings of how much time we actually have in the day.
Yeah.
Now that I've been working basically overtime.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all the time. Like the next 2 weeks, I don't have anything scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
But for the last three, I've been working like almost 80-hour weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And during my days, during the weekdays anyway, I literally only have like a total of 6 hours and then an hour in between different jobs,
Mm-hmm.
or 2 hours in separate spots,
Mm-hmm.
with different jobs. So like that 6 hours, goes to sleeping.
Yeah.
So so it's yeah, I definitely empathize with how like when putting things into perspective, what that actually looks like, and that concept of being strategic, right? Because that's not an excuse for me to not have direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think understanding what your North Star goals are super, super invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just important, they're important beyond measure. It is the thing to look up to when you are too tired to figure out what's
Mm-hmm.
next. It
Mm-hmm.
is the thing that keeps you going. It is the story that lights the proverbial fire within you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the having that as a like having your North Star goals just
Mm-hmm.
uber uber important. Um,
And let's pause there for a second because you had told me about the North Star goal, and I want to kind of give people a tool in case this is something that they haven't done before. And so a North Star goal is, I think, more than just your big goal, right? It's kind of a
yeah,
statement of your life or where you're heading. It's your ultimate story, right? And so one of the ways you can do that, which John did, was use ChatGPT. I think that's a great method. And I kind of realized, John, I did it, but in a different way too. So another way that you could do this, I have, I think it's 12 things that I read off to myself every morning. I try to do it every morning and every night. And it's statements of what happened in my life. So one is like one of my big goals, just because I love food so much and I enjoy sharing food with people and learning, I would love to one day get a private chef. And so one of my goals, and this is all about like, what does my ultimate life look like? Who am I in that life? What am I doing? And so one of mine is I hired a personal chef who travels with me and my family, creating meals for us and also like enjoys the meals with us. And is a part of the family. We're eating delicious food all the time and putting it in past tense because psychologically, your brain, if you put things in past tense, it has to find the evidence and the pathway to actually make that a truth. Your brain does not know the difference between what you have imagined and what happens in real life. And you can look up studies on that. There's studies based on like the things that you think, your brain reacts to it the same way as if it actually happened in real life to you. Obviously, if it happened in real life, there's going to be additional like physical elements to that. But essentially, what that's saying is what you think, therefore you are. And so I am really specific now with my words and when I think about myself and when I think about my future. And so reading that to me, and I'm sure, John, you probably do something similar where you're looking at your North Star goal to remind yourself, this is who I am, this is what my life is, and this is the embodiment that I want to have and be while I'm here. And it just, I can't explain it, but it just really puts you in that state of being and it connects you to it and allows you to feel what it would feel like to actually be at that moment and pulls you closer. And if you're looking at this throughout your day, or at least even once a day, when you are actually completing your goals or that 1% for the day, it's going to make a difference because you're going to be more aligned with that. And that's going to be at the forefront of your mind. And your brain's going to go, how do I get to there? Versus just trying to complete a goal for the end objective. If I just said hire a personal chef, okay, like that could be done tomorrow, but is that really going to be fulfilling? Like, why do I want that? What does it look like? Why is that the way it is in my life? These are all questions that even if you're not thinking about them out loud, your brain subconsciously still has to have like find the answer to it.
I think this is actually super useful in like a number of different ways that are actually practiced on a regular basis
Mhm.
with a lot of different types of groups of people, specifically religious groups.
Mhm.
Right? We're talking about mantras. We're
Mhm.
talking about
Prayers.
prayers.
Mhm.
Right? These are things that are actively practiced in a lot of spiritual and religious groups. And I think even for somebody who maybe is agnostic or an atheist of sort, um, or you just have a different belief entirely, this stuff still legitimately works. There's power within your words, and that's not meant to sound like out there. There is literally, you're programming yourself. You're
Mhm.
you're your own programmer, right? So whether you want to program certain words into how you view the world and how you operate within it, that's really dependent on how willing you are to look into this
Mhm.
and invest yourself in yourself. Um, I think for me, my mantra is that 1% now.
Mhm.
Like that is what it's become. So like I
Mhm.
don't necessarily tell myself that I'm gonna be that I define existence as I see it, right? But that me telling myself 1% is very much encompassing a lot of these ideas in and of itself. And what I often find is on the days where I can come on the days where I can get myself to say it to myself, on those days, I don't do 1%. I do
Mhm.
three,
Yeah.
four,
Yeah.
5. And it's nothing other than I'm not thinking about actually completing a thing. I'm not the 1% is not I'm gonna make a phone call today. The 1% is a reminder that I have the ability to do more.
Mhm. And it's
And
digestible too. It's like,
yeah,
oh, you really can do 1%, but once you get started, that's where the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5% actually stacks and comes on top of it because then you're like, "Oh, well, I've already completed this. It took me 5 to 10 minutes. I'm gonna keep going."
um one of the things that we can kind of point to see like the function of this is a lot of people who talk about going to the gym. If
Mhm.
you ask, a lot of people will often say the hardest part about going to the gym is getting to the gym. Once you're there and once you're working out, you're there and working out. But waking up and actually getting yourself to go
Mhm.
That's the tough part,
Mhm.
right? And this kind of, works in a similar manner because, that 1% is, it pushes you, or it pushes me specifically, to do something, to do anything. But what I often find is that once I start doing something, it usually leads me into the next thing I want to do.
Yeah.
And because that 1% for me personally is a reminder of the North Star that I'm going to, it's the for me, the North Star is the version of myself that I ultimately,
Mhm.
that's the end all be all. That is the ultimate version of John. Now there are North Star goals alongside that, right? There are actual specific things that I would like to, not I would like to, that will be accomplished. But um there's something to be said about like being able to remind yourself of who you are, um who you can be.
Mhm.
I think that's important, especially when you begin your journey of placing value in yourself.
Mhm.
I think that's super super cool and super important. And like when you, there's just a there's a difference in the way people bring themselves to the table. There's a difference in the conversations that get had, in the tenor of somebody's voice when
Yeah.
you can tell they're invested.
I want to capitalize on that for a second. So it wasn't Jay Shetty, which he's, a speaker and, he talks about similar things. It was someone in the same realm as him, but he, instead of doing affirmations, he did something that helped you get to the person you want to be quicker. And so your North Star is almost like where you're going, but it also will give you your whys. So the guy who I heard this from, and I wish I could remember his name, but he said, I never do affirmations. He goes, I do I statements. And then I ask myself the question, why? And so, for example, an easy one, going back to the gym example, why am I a really fit person? So it doesn't matter if you're fit or not. It doesn't matter about your concept of being fit, because that's actually where a lot of people get stuck. I'm not this yet, or I'm working towards this, I'll never have it, or that seems unattainable, or yeah, I'll get there eventually. If you tell yourself I statements about the person you're going to be, why am I, and ask yourself why am I such a fit person? Then your brain has to come up with the whys. And at first, you might not have a reason, but the whys that your brain does come up with is going to be your justification for those days where the 1% is hard, for those days where you're like, I really don't want to go to the gym today. Your brain's going to remember why you do the thing. And so it's almost reaffirming your whys without having to have yourself convince yourself that you need to go through with something because it's valuable to you. I haven't tried it out, but it makes a lot of psychological sense as to how our brains intake information. But I think understanding your whys, I always say the person with the strongest why, it's never, or it's not that it's never, but it's not always that it's the person that has the most skills, the most drive, the most success that is going to win. It's going to be the person with the strongest why. And I've seen that play out. So there's a show called Alone. And so they take these contestants, they put them in the wilderness for about like, it depends. So either they have like a certain amount of days, let's say 60 days, where you have to survive on your own with only 10 items from an approved list. You are gathering everything else and your food yourself, or it's last man standing. And I can usually pick out with a very high confidence and accuracy at least the last 3 people that are going to be in the season from the very first episode. And you want to know what tells me? It's the people with the strongest whys. And it's not the people. So you would think, I have a lot of people on there that have families. Oh, I'm doing this for my family. You want to know what the difference is between someone who says, I'm doing it for my family, and someone who says, I'm doing it for my family, we desperately need the money? They have a stronger why. Because the desperation for the money is and provision for their family is strong enough than the reason for their family, and the people who have the why of their family being the strongest are the ones to first go home because they go, I really miss my family. It's not a strong enough why. So asking yourself these questions, finding out your whys, and figuring out what is going to continuously drive you, so that way your brain automates that for you. It's a really powerful tool.
Do you think, this is kind of like an offhand question, do you think in a world where conflict of interest didn't exist and everybody knew what the next step was to be better, um, do you think everybody would take that step?
I don't think so.
Why?
Because it's kind of similar to, so I have this saying that I started saying at the end of last year, and I said that your pain is your medicine. But a lot of times we don't know how to take the medicine from the pain, and so that's where suffering comes from. And so sometimes pain can get addicting, and I believe sometimes we still consciously choose pain because there's a part of our story that we don't want to let go of, or that's serving us. It's always about serving us in some way. And I've asked a lot of people questions, when they're like, "Oh, I'm so tired of being here." I always start asking them the question. I was like, "Okay, that makes sense. What is serving you
Well,
from being in this place?" And they're like, "Well, it's not. I'm in so much pain. I hate this, and that." And I'm like, "But there's something." And until you find,
let's
yeah.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. So, well, I do mean to interrupt. Sorry. Um, let's pretend like we can take out all conflicting interests. So, pain, fear, like if you take out all of the negatives, right? Like in terms of what will pull us away from an idea, do you think even in that world?
There's no polarity. You need polarity in order for the contrast to highlight the value of making a change. So, for example, if you didn't have any what we would label as negative emotions, which are still just information and data sets that your body is giving you, if you took all that out, even if you were presented with the next step and someone said, "Oh, it's better," how exactly would you understand better if there was nothing with where you're at to necessarily improve? It would have to, like, that's illogical, because in order for you to understand how it's better, something about your current reality has to be not as good, which therefore would be a negative or something that you would want to change.
Hmm.
So I
I,
think I think it would be more that you would find nothingness. And nothingness is not emptiness, it's kind of like when they say that black is the absorption of all color and white is the refraction of all color. I think that um it's kind of like that.
I don't know where I fall on this. I don't know where I fall because I think that you might be right in that, um or I may agree with you. Let me rephrase. I may agree with you that no, we wouldn't all take those next steps. But I don't necessarily I don't think I'm 100% on that, on the reasoning as to why. I don't know why that is. Like I don't have a full thought, I guess, in this. I haven't really explored it for myself, but like what is it about the soul that like that would be comfortable or okay stagnating without any pressures. Um, but then again, I have to ask like the question of like, is it possible to exist and better your life simply by existing? And I think the answer there is yes, absolutely. There are plenty of examples of like existence bettering um, life. I don't know. This is kind of like starting to circle in on of it on itself. I haven't given this much thought, so
So the one thing I would say though is in the absence of anything to improve, what's there really to improve, right? Like it would all kind of feel the same. Like
yeah,
part of why we reach for different things is because we stop feeling good or we want to feel fulfilled.
that's kind of an interesting thought. Again, like I don't know where I fall, and I can't put my finger quite on it. Because like there are things that exist in this world like creativity, right? Like creativity and the want to build doesn't necessarily come from the opposite reaction of never having built before, right? Nor does it necessarily come from not having anything to build with or build from, right? There's some people who create for the expression of creation, and that expression in and of itself is a propelling thing, right? There are even people who don't take enjoyment in their expression of creativity, but still are compelled to do it, regardless of their personal enjoyment in the thing, um, that is. Like, so if souls, are these things that can stagnate, how does that explain like that thing that for me, right, I explain creativity as something coming from the soul. It is the song that we cannot sing with our voices, um or I guess for some artists you can, huh? But that's kind of my thinking, which is why I'm like I don't know.
Well, so then I have a counter question for you though. Do you think there's ever a case that an artist, any type of artist wants to improve simply for the fact of creation? I mean, there's always some element of I'm not good enough or this doesn't sound right or this isn't painted the best that I can do. If you took out all of that, I understand what you're saying about how the need to create is an organic thing that we can do naturally without needing an objective. Like creation for the act of creation and creation wanting to be created because it's creation. But going back to your question about improvement or going to the next level, you said, what motivation would someone have to get to the next level if you had taken out all of the main reasons as to why people want to improve in the first place, whether it's creation or not? Can you think of
Well,
any?
well, can I kind of think that people can get to the next level without wanting to get to the next level. If you draw a circle 100 times, my guess is the 100th circle is going to be better than the first circle,
But
right?
do you think that's
Whether or
conscious
not
though? Like along the way, you're going to have a conscious thought of, oh, wow, I've improved. But that doesn't, the thought, oh, wow, I've improved, isn't going to hold the same meaning as, yes, like I consciously tried at improvement.
but the same meaning, definitely not, but it doesn't change its existence, right? Like it would just be on a sliding scale, but a 1 versus a 10 doesn't negate the 1. It's just a way smaller value.
True, but I also don't think that answers your question, would people get to the next level? Because
Mm.
that's almost like it just naturally that's almost like saying the same thing as like someone who's really good at sports You can take someone who has a natural talent and then they're naturally going to get better because they discover things. But I would say the times when I just thinking about my life when I've gone, "Oh, that's cool. Oh yeah, I've definitely improved in this." If it wasn't something that I was frustrated by or wanted to improve or was working to improve, I more just look at it like, "Oh, that's cool," but it doesn't really have any meaning to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the
And
same for you.
and to clarify, like this is a conversation that leads nowhere functional. I wanna put that out there. This is like the type of thought that doesn't lead anywhere, anywhere functional whatsoever. I'm just kind of thinking about the world, and like, that is a weird thing that, like, if we were to give everybody everything that they need, there would be people who still choose to not take the step. And it's a strange kind of idea, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure there was a time in my life where I wouldn't have chosen to take the next step either. So yeah, I don't know what even kind of put me in that direction, but
Well, and there's another question, like, is not taking the next step bad? Because there's some people that know the next step and they really consider it. Like, I've thought about this a little bit lately, where if I'm in my 60s or if I'm in my 70s, I've done a lot of life. I have 10 to 25 years left. And I feel like time's going to feel different at that point too. Am I, is there going to be a point where I say, you know what? This is good enough. And I'm just going to enjoy I'm going to enjoy the things that I value.
it could be. I mean, like, people talk as if, like, you know, as if that's a thing that they experience. But I also feel like the stories that we hear a lot more are that of, the next thing. You know what I mean?
Or the
Like,
thing that but there's this one thing that I didn't get a chance to do.
it
And
doesn't, I don't know. There's something about the human spirit that doesn't feel like stagnation feels wrong,
yeah.
right? Like, I think even if given the even in that kind of magical situation where everybody has everything they need, there aren't any drawbacks, and the next step was clear as day
Mhm.
as to how you were to better yourself.
Mhm.
I think even the person who chooses not to take that step, there's recognition that they're not taking that step and it
Yeah.
feels bad. So, like, I feel like there's some part of you that disagrees with that action. I don't know, maybe it's my belief in humanity, which I'm surprised is not
No.
burned to the ground by now, but I
I
do feel like stagnation is different than what we are as human beings.
I do agree, because and so I think this will tie in, I think I can tie this also with what we were talking about with our stories before. I agree with you with when you said, like, we're built to create and it's going to keep on creating and we're going to create something. But I do think if you're working towards big goals, there might be a time in your life where you go, you know what, this is far enough. There is going to be some sort of creation still, but I think it's going to be around that same level and you're not going to keep drastically leveling up like you might have earlier in life. But I also think I definitely agree with you. Stagnation feels bad to us because our what we're able to do most naturally is create something. And going back to when we were talking about time and this concept of who we are and our value set and how we're going to achieve our objectives in the 1%, recognize that you're always creating something and you're going to always be busy in some way. And so being intentional, uh, if you want to have a change in your life, be way more intentional about what busyness you are allowing into your life and what busyness you are creating. Because busyness can be anything from, oh, I have a family, to, oh, I have two jobs, to, oh, I fill my days up with my friends. You want to, like, I saw this video of this. I don't know why it was suggested to me. I don't follow him, but it was apparently this billionaire son that lives with his parents. And it was one of those videos where it was like a day in my life as a billionaire's son. And so he's living at home and it went all throughout his day. He like worked out, went shopping, got a haircut, did a little bit of work and what have you. And I think that just it really spoke to me in the way of doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter where you're at in life, you will always have something in your life that is being created and is being maintained in a way energetically by you. So what is that for you? What do you want? You know, and just stop doing the things that you don't want and start saying no to the things that you really don't want in your life because it's always going to be filled in some way, shape, or form every single day. Your time always goes to something, whether you want it to or not. Your time could go to you just laying in bed. It's always going to some sort of creation of reality. And I think that's really interesting to think about because when you think about how much we truly value time and we get stressed over time, well, you're not actually gate guarding your time and making sure that you really like what your time is going to. It's not just the things that we're building and creating. Do you like that it's going to your sleep? Do you like the quality of your sleep? Do you feel rested during the times when you go, you know what, I'm exchanging my time for rest? There's no, and the funny thing is, there's no wrong answer to this math equation. The equation is time will equal what? And it's our job or not our job, I guess, if you want to be lax about it, to decide what your time is being exchanged for.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. I think I don't know why I feel so introspective about the human spirit right now. I think part of what's going on is I've been doing a lot of soul searching myself the
Mhm.
last couple of weeks, and so I've kind of been trying to get down to the core of my vision for myself, and who I am as a person, and what I want to accomplish in this world beyond me. When I'm no longer on this planet, what did I stand for? What did I exist for?
Mhm.
What reason did I define for myself?
Mhm.
These are kind of the questions that have been kind of plaguing me at the moment, and so it's been making me a little bit, thoughtful about, what is it to be human? You know, this spirit that we inhabit, that we let take over us at times, the fire that we let consume us, and and functionally drive us in a direction. What is that thing that is like so many people speak to it, but it's not something that we can physically observe, outside of what we create. um you know so what is that thing? It's definitely been a thought that's been on my mind, and these idea of like this idea of everybody having the opportunity to take the next step. I think another big part of it is I've been reading a series of books. I think I've talked about it before. It's the Scythe series by Neil Shusterman. And man, I really enjoyed that series. I can't wait to see what other people have to say about it, but it's a dystopian series. So, the world is in a much different place than our own. And, a living in a world where, the things that we need are taken care of, and where there is something that is essentially God, but the type of God that we want in our lives, not the type of God that may exist. The type of God who plays the bad guy so that we can feel like the good guy. The type of
Oh.
God that interprets your actions to such a degree that it can have the meaningful conversations that you desire, or the lackluster conversations that you may need to fill time rather than drive you in any particular place. I'm a strong believer in the concept that, you know, there's not a perfect sentence for everybody in this world. When somebody's in a dark place or a tough place or sad or what have you, um, not everybody has the perfect sentence that is going to reach that person. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe that that person that perfect sentence may not even exist.
Oh,
It may
interesting.
not be a real thing. There may not be a combination of words in this language or any other language that can reach your soul the way who wants to communicate with you can, um, or wants to, not can, but wants to. And so, like in this world where this thing can almost do that, you know, this concept of what it is to be a human spirit. Why do we keep going?
I agreed with everything you said up until when you said you don't know if the sentence exists for every person. I do believe that it does, only because I think every person has a manifesto. There's value in every single person being here. Um, and it's, up to you how far you go with that value. But I also think that the concept that you had of like the God that he plays bad so that we can play good, really interesting when you think about like the internal conflict of the soul, you know, of
Man,
of the two different
it's
pieces. And
strange.
how interesting, because normally it's the piece you don't like that you feel like is running your life, and you're like, oh, if only I was just more time conscious, if I was just more organized, if I was prettier, if I was skinnier, if I was all these self concepts that we want to be but aren't, reaffirms the person that we don't want to be. And so I also would say that one of the best things I've ever done for myself, especially in, because I had a really kind of very hard and like dark time last year. And I would say I still reach moments where like I'm trying to continue to work through that as things come up. One of the best things I ever did, I have a daily gratitude and affirmation practice. And you know what? Like both serve a purpose, but I would say in those moments where it is dark and there is nothing else, when I found affirmations that truly just made me feel a certain way, made me feel good, the one that I always go to, I am a person that everything works out for easily, effortlessly, quickly, for my greatest good, in my highest favor, with me fully supported, and for the good of all. I've had that one. I've said that one so many times to myself. And also saying, I will, the other one that I've said just internally to myself, I will never abandon myself again. Both of those have popped up in those moments, unbidden in my mind. And you know what? That was the difference between just being completely awash with everything and just having that moment of reprieve to actually go on a different thought pattern. So I would also say, if you don't have a sentence, if you don't have something that you are affirming that is good about yourself, that your brain can then pull up and go, no, wait, we have this one thing. Even if it's one, you just need one thing, one sentence. And it's all the difference.
So, we didn't quite get an opportunity to play a game
No,
here, but
that's okay. This is a
some
great
cool
conversation.
conversations. Um, I kind of wanna finish out here.
I'm in alignment.
Um, so this is kind of my question to the audience, but I'm interested in what your answer is, and
Mm-hmm.
I have an answer of my own, of course.
Okay.
Is what is the metaphor or analogy or um, wow, funny how we're coming full circle to what is the story that
Yeah.
you're telling yourself. What's the is there a metaphor that you find yourself telling yourself more than others? something that you kind of attune yourself to, so to speak?
What's yours? That might give me an idea of.
Sure. So my saying, that's what I should have led with, a saying or a metaphor, because that kind of like outlines it a little easier. My favorite that I've probably been saying for years now, years. Um, Actually, two come to mind, but my favorite one, um, a calm sea never made a skilled sailor.
Mm,
That's favorite, my favorite like saying. That I don't know, makes me feel good about um feel good about kind of coming face to face with the things that I find tough, the things
mm.
that I feel find difficult. Um,
So the
yeah.
reason why I asked is because I do a lot of affirmations, which are things that I've made up um for myself, not so much other quotes that pop into my head. Um but there is one that I started rethinking about lately, and it's from Layla Hormozy, where she said, "F your mood, follow the plan." And so
Okay. Yeah.
it just pops in. It only for the last couple of days it popped in my head, where because normally what happens, I will always tell myself, "Oh, I need to do this. I need to do it." I don't care what it like, "Oh, I need to take care of myself. I need to whatever." And so I realized I was like, "Why do I need to do anything?" That's not a really kind way of talking to myself, even if I'm wrapping it in, "Oh, you need to do this because it's good for you." So that pops into my head, and so I'm almost like doing the opposite, where anytime that pops up, I remind myself, "No, we don't need to do anything. We can just be kind to ourselves and, you know, maybe we'll do this." But like
Interesting.
not making it like a need. But
I
the
do.
F the
I
mood, follow the
do.
plan, I think is
Yeah.
useful because I've had a lot of emotions lately. And it just reminds me of like, you know what? I can have these, but for the last week or so, I've also been doing things. And so it just kind of, I think the reason why it popped into my head was more confirmation of like, yeah, you can still feel crappy. You can appreciate yourself feeling crappy and you can still do your 1%. And it doesn't have to be connected.
Um, F your mood, follow the plan. I do like that. And I think a big part of why I like that is something that I've shared in conversations and discussions. But people fail, right? People, this is
Mhm.
gonna failure is something that you should be comfortable with, because it happens. It is a natural part of existence. That said, um, systems systems bring success. If you can design a system that is pragmatic, it makes sense, and has firm foundation, the system will get you to where you need to go. So even on those days where you can't think, if you just follow the system that you deign, um, a lot of times that'll do the thing you needed to do without you having to expend processing power to figure it out.
Mhm.
So F your mood, follow the plan. Love that.
Mhm.
Love that.
Yeah.
I think that works really well with systems. My question for you all, going to the end of this episode here, is what is your quote that you really enjoy, something that you've said to yourself a number of times? One other one that comes to mind is perception is reality. That's one that's been said many, many times
Mhm.
across, the story of my life. What are yours?
I do have another one you made me think of, your words are power. I've been saying
It's
that
a
for
good one.
so
It's a
long.
truth.
Yeah. And I really that one I started saying, I don't know, maybe like 4 years ago. And I've really, each year, it's like I get more specific and less okay with saying anything negative about myself, and even others saying negative things about me. Or if you are going to do that, like, you're not going to be in my life. So, and I'm not saying like constructive feedback, but I'm saying people who are saying negative things without any constructive reason. My question, what is your why am I statement? Why am I such a fit person? Why am I such an awesome business owner? Why am I an amazing millionaire? Whatever it is. What is your why am I statement? Start
Because
asking
I'm me,
yourself
baby.
every
Because
day.
I'm me.
Yeah.
That's it. It's the end all be all. Why am I
Yeah.
such a good businessman? It's
Yeah.
because I exist. I'm here. I
Hey.
can't help it. It's a con. That's the name of my. That's the name of my manifesto. Is the consequence of my reality.
Oh
That's the
yeah.
consequence
So
of my
good.
reality. It's just a good businessman.
So good. All right, guys. Well, thank you for being here. It's a great conversation, I think, for us to come back to. And hope you guys have a good day. Don't be too hard on yourselves. Remember, your words are power. And what was it? A good, no. A rusty didn't make a skill, or no, a smoothie didn't make a skilled sailor. Ah, got
Yeah,
it.
a calm sea
Clumsy.
never made a skilled sailor.
I had it in
And
my head, but
always
oh
remember fall face.
no.
See,
Head
I can't even
first,
remember.
face down.
Head first, face down. There we go.
We got there,
Man,
guys.
that came from episode 1, right?
One,
Holy crap!
yeah, head first,
What a
face
random thing.
okay, this is the last note because I think this is really awesome. Since John and I have started doing this podcast, in conversations with people, I've literally told people, question your constructs. And I'm like, oh, that feels so good.
Me too, actually. It's come
Yeah,
up in a yeah. I like it.
amazing. All right, well, have a great day, guys. Love you. Bye.
Bye.